Today in our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster EZ5 Direct Connect Baseplate Kit with removable arms, part number RM-521440-5.
Keep in mind this is only going to be one component of your flat tow setup. For a complete and safe setup, you're going to need a tow bar wiring, and we use the Hopkins Universal taillight wiring kit for towed vehicles, a tow bar, and we use the Roadmaster NightHawk All Terrain non-binding tow bar, and also a supplemental braking system, which we use the SMI Stay and Play Duo supplemental braking system. So here's what our Roadmaster baseplate is going to look like once we have it installed in our Grand Cherokee. Now this is going to serve as the connection point in between our motorhome so that we can safely flat tow our Grand Cherokee down the road. Now the design of our Roadmaster Direct Connect baseplate is just that. We're going to have our tow bar, and it's going to come into this slot right here and be a very simple connection with just a few pin and clips to hold it in place. Now whenever we're not towing, we have the option of taking the arms out. We simply pull on this pin here, rotate the arm, and we can pull it out, and it's a very clean look to where we're really not going to notice too much sticking out. And whenever we do get ready to tow, it's going to be just as simple. We're going to put our arm in, we're going to push it until that ring pushes out, and then rotate it, and it'll lock into a towing position. Our base plate is going to distribute that weight while it's being pulled a little bit more evenly, so it's going to take that strain and stress off of our front suspension. Our Roadmaster base plate is going to be compatible with all Roadmaster tow bars that are motorhome mounted, and those are going to be the ones that slide directly into the hitch on the motorhome that don't require a ball mount or any kind of coupler. They're also going to be compatible with the Blue Ox tow bars with an adapter that is sold separately. Like most base plates, there is going to be a safety chain connection point just to the outside of where we're going to be attaching our tow bar, so we're going to have a nice easy access to get our safety cables in place. I do want to mention that our electrical socket as well as the breakaway switch are not included in our base plate kit, but our base plate is going to come with a couple mounting points so that we can mount our electrical accessories right on the front here. Now our base plate is specifically designed for our Grand Cherokee. As you can see, we didn't have to trim any bit for our base plate to get installed because it is going to come out through the hole right here where the factory tow hooks go. Now there's very minimal drilling, and that's only going to be to put in your electrical accessories, and you may have to trim the grill like we did there so we can get access to them. But all in all, it's a rather simple installation to get our base plate installed. Let's show you how to do that now.
To begin our installation, we're going to open up the hood, and we're going to have two push pins, one on each side of our grill, that's going to be attaching it to the core support. We're going to have to pull those out, so you're going to grab a flathead screwdriver or a trim panel tool. And there's going to be a small notch in that push pin. You're going to want to come underneath that notch and pry the center section up, and that'll unlock the fastener. We're going to come underneath the outer section and pull the rest of it out. Now if we come to the front of the wheel well, right where our trim is going to meet our fascia and the fender, we're going to have a 10mm bolt we're going to need to pull out. So we'll grab a 10mm socket and remove it. Now underneath that bolt, if we follow that trim down, we're going to have two plastic rivets. Now we're going to need to remove those, so you're going to want to grab a small drill bit, maybe just under 1/4 inch, and we're going to drill right in the center so we can get those rivets out. And I will say it does help if we're on the driver's side. We're going to want to point the tire over to the passenger side. That way we have a little bit more room to access it. And with the rivets removed and the bolt removed, we're going to go and repeat that on the other side. We're going to start at the bottom and just start gently pulling it away. Now there are going to be some clips holding it in place, but we want to pull away at least far enough that it's going to go right past the area where our fender meets our fascia. We're going to pull that away on both sides. Now underneath the front of our Jeep, we're going to have this plastic splash shield. We're going to have several fasteners along the front edge that are holding it in place, as well as on the side, we're going to have another bolt holding it in. So we can take a 10mm socket, and we're going to remove those bolts along the front. And on the side, there's going to be another bolt attaching the wheel well liner to the splash shield. And that's a 10 millimeter as well. There's also going to be a couple push pin fasteners that we're going to have to remove as well. We're going to take those out the same way we did with the ones on top. Pop that center section out first, and then come to the outer section and pop the rest of the push pin out. Now there's also going to be these quarter turn plastic fasteners that are holding it in. There's going to be one on the wheel well liner, as well as two, one on each side on the front of our skid plate. Now these we just want to turn counterclockwise, a quarter turn, and they'll come out. Now at the back of our splash shield towards the rear of our Jeep, we're going to have two 13 millimeter head bolts holding it in place. So we'll grab a 13 millimeter socket and remove those. Now before we get ready to pull our fascia all the way off, it's very important that where we had those push pins up top on the core support, we're going to want to reach underneath that plastic and release the push pin that's holding it in place. And we'll do that for both sides. Now it's always a good idea to get an extra set of hands when we go to pull it off, but we're going to start at the corner where our fender meets our fascia, and we're going to start peeling the fascia away. There's going to be some clips holding it in place. We're just going to work our way towards the center. You may need to lift up and kind of work it around to release those clips. We're going to carefully pull the fascia away. Now, if your Jeep is equipped with fog lights, we're going to have to remove those, or at least the wires. So if we just pull up on this small tab here, I should be able to pull the light out. There'll be a tab on the top and bottom. Just kind of pull up on them to release them off those clips, then we can pull the wire out. On the passenger side, we're going to have a large connector that's going to have all of our other sensors connected to it. We're going to pull that red tab back so that it unlocks it, and we push in on the release tab and pull the connector out. Now we can set our fascia aside where it won't get damaged. Now if we come to our tow hook, we come and follow it straight back. We're going to have a nut that's holding it in place. So we're going to want to grab a 30 millimeter socket or wrench, and we're going to want to remove that nut. You just kind of pull down on the splash shield a bit to give yourself room. I'm going to remove those on both sides. Now on either side of our tow hook, we're going to have two bolts that are also holding it in. So we can grab a 16 millimeter socket and remove those two bolts. And we pull our tow hook out. And with the tow hook removed, we'll have room to get to the other bolt that's going vertically into our bumper core here, as well as the one back here. Again, we'll be using a 16 millimeter socket to pull those out. Now the bracket and the tow hooks are not going to be getting reinstalled. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side as well. Now right where our tow hooks and our brackets were, we're going to come to the very outside of the vehicle. We're going to have this bolt that's right in our bumper core here. We're going to go ahead and grab a 13 millimeter socket and pull that out. We're going to do that for both sides. Now the long bolt that we moved from our bumper core here, we're going to want to grab some red Loctite. So we're going to put a small amount on all the threads. You're going to want to make sure you put Loctite on all the bolts, make sure they're nice and secure. So now that we have Loctite on our bolt, we're going to grab our main receiver brace and get it loosely in place. So when we grab our main receiver brace, there's a couple things you're going to want to pay attention to. This tab here on the front, you want to make sure it's facing to the outside of the car, and then we're going to have two small tabs that are round. We want those to be facing up, so you'll know if you have the correct one or not. Now the tab on the outside with the oval hole, it's going to line up with that factory hole. We're going to reuse the factory bolt that we took out. And for now, we're just gonna get everything in, just hand tight, couple threads, so our brace won't fall down. Then we can grab one of the long bolts in our kit and follow it up with one of the small lock washers, and then one of the large washers that has a smaller hole in it. And again, make sure we put a little bit of Loctite on the threads. We're going to rotate our main receiver brace up, go through the hole, and it should line up with that factory weld nut on the bottom of our frame. Again, we're just going to get a couple threads in there, hand tight, so it'll support itself. And then we're going to put one in the back hole as well. Now also where our tow hook was, we're going to have another hole that's going to line up with that factory weld nut. And again, we're going to be reusing the factory hardware. So just take a little Loctite, put it on our bolt, coming up through the receiver brace. Get a few threads, get it started by hand. I'm going to come back and I'm going to snug up my hardware. For the bolt that's going vertically up, the factory bolt, I'm going to be using that same 16mm socket. And for our factory bolt on the outside, I'm going to be using that 13mm socket again. And then finally for our new hardware, I'm going to be using a 17mm socket to snug them up. Now at this point, if you're adding electrical or a braking system that has a breakaway switch on it, our kit is going to come with a crossmember brace. There's going to be 2 holes on each side, and they'll line up with our main receiver brace. Just want to make sure that that center section is pointing down, and we're going to go right underneath the main receiver brace on each side. Now in order to get this in place, we're going to have to drill 2 1/2-inch holes, one going up through our main receiver brace into the bumper core itself. So I'm going to start by drilling a smaller hole. And again, I'm just going to go through my brace and go directly into the bumper core. Now the bumper core is rather hard metal, so using a little bit of penetrating oil or any kind of spray lubricant is going to keep the drill bit cool and help it cut better. After we have our pilot hole drilled, we're going to come back with the full size of a 1/2 inch, and we're going to drill through our bumper core. And again, just going to take your time, and the key to drilling through hard metal is going to be a lot of pressure at slow speed, and make sure you use that oil to keep the drill bit cool. And we're going to go ahead and drill the other side out as well. Now with our holes drilled out, we're going to take one of the 1/2-inch bolts in our kit, apply a little bit of Loctite to the threads, and we're going to follow it up with a lock washer, and then one of the smaller 1/2-inch washers. We can grab our cross member, and we're going to be coming from the bottom going up. So we can take that bolt, and right now we're just going to loosely get everything in place. But on the top, you'll notice that there's going to be a gap in between our main receiver and our bumper core, and that's where our pipe spacer is going to come in. So you just want to make sure you can slide it in place, and then we'll use our bolt to line it up. And then up top, if we come from the side of our bumper core, we're going to take a handle nut. You may have to bend the handle a little bit to get it into position to where we can get it in, but you're going to want to find the bolt that's coming through and then loosely get it started just so we have at least a couple threads holding it in place. And once you have both your handle nuts in place, you're going to want to come back with a 3/4 inch socket. You just want to snug them up. With everything in place, we're going to come back and we're going to torque all of our hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. We're going to repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. Now that we have our wiring and braking system in place, we'll go ahead and put our fascia back on.
Now the fender liner is where we drilled our rivets out. Our kit is going to come with some replacement plastic rivets. You're going to want to use a plastic rivet gun. Drop the rivet down in there. Put it into the fender. Just make sure you have everything lined up. And we'll keep squeezing until the rivet breaks off. Now a lot of times it'll set, but either the rivet or the rivet gun isn't grabbing enough to make it break. So what you can try to do is that once you have it squeezed, you can kind of pull on it and then reset it. And if it still isn't breaking, but it's set in there, you can take a pair of side cutters. We're just going to cut that tab right off. And the kit does come with enough rivets to replace all the ones that we drilled out.
And that'll finish up your look at the Roadmaster Easy 5 Direct Connect Baseplate Kit with removable arms, part number RM-521440-5 on our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee.